Hi, you're listening to Behind the Bib podcast with Lisa Watkins. Real talk for every runner. Greetings and salutations. I am Lisa Watkins. I am your host for Behind the Bib. It's a podcast where I come on here and I just talk to you about races in the Southeast. So the idea is that it's real talk for every runner. So I am what's called a back of the pack runner. I think I coined the term mullet runner, where like the party is in the back. So my idea is that I'm just going to come on here, and after I run races throughout the Southeast, I'm going to come on here and tell you about them. So with that, let's get started on this one. So this past weekend, I went down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And so I live in Huntsville, Alabama. That means that Baton Rouge is about 7.5 hours away from Huntsville. And which is it's a good day's drive. It's okay. You go down through part of North Alabama, and then you hit 59 for a long time, and then you take that all the way down through Mississippi, and then you can either go through New Orleans to get to Baton Rouge, or you can just drop down into Baton Rouge without going through like the Stennis Space Center area and New Orleans over there. So on the way there, that is the way we chose to go, and it turns out on the way back, that's the way we chose to come back as well. On the way there, we ran into quite a bit of traffic before we even got out of Huntsville. Oh my gosh, it was like they're doing some construction on 565 at the Trash Panda Stadium. And as we were leaving, we hit about a good 40-minute backup, which is always hard because you're like anxious to get on the road. And that was hard. So 40 minutes, and then we finally got on the road. We had another backup in Tuscaloosa, and so it made our 7-hour drive about, after you stop and get gas and stuff like that, it was about 10 and a half hours, something around there. So we didn't get into Baton Rouge until later than we had planned. It was probably, I guess, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, something around there. So got in there a little bit later on Friday night, and on Saturday, our goal was to go over and visit the expo. So let me back up, because beforehand, the Louisiana Marathon, let me tell you when it's at, because it happens every year. And this past year, it was this past weekend, so Tuesday, it's Tuesday, January 21st when I'm recording this. The race weekend, it happens, there are several events over the whole weekend, and I'm looking at my notes down here so I can be sure to tell you the right things. So the race I did was on Sunday, January 19th, but there were events all weekend long. So on Saturday, January 18th, and on Sunday, January 19th. On Saturday, they had the Window World Louisiana Marathon 5K, so which is funny because if you're in the running community, and that's like one of the number one ways that you can tell somebody doesn't know the running community. It's like, hey, how was your marathon 5K? And you're like, no, it was more than 3 miles. It was 26.2, but but this whole event weekend is called the Louisiana Marathon. And so the way they have it named is like the Louisiana Marathon 5K, and then the Louisiana Blue Kids Marathon, and the Louisiana World, or the Window World Louisiana Quarter Marathon. So the naming conventions are a little bit interesting. So anyway, they have a 5K, they have a quarter marathon, they have a kids marathon, and then it was super cute, and I wish I would have got to go to it. I saw pictures of it afterwards, but they have a Birth Center of Baton Rouge Diaper Dash, which is so adorable. It's like babies in diapers and they're like crawling and whoever gets to the end. Anyway, we didn't end up getting to the expo in time to go see that. But man, I wish I would have. I think it would have been really cute. So they have the 5K, the quarter marathon, the kids marathon, the diaper dash, and then that's all on Saturday. And then I think it's all on Saturday. And then on Sunday, they have the half marathon and the marathon. And I chose to do this one first because I'm trying to do 50 half marathons, right? So a half marathon in every state, and I had not done Louisiana yet. And my wonderful daughter and my soon-to-be son-in-law are live in Baton Rouge now, and so it was kind of awesome. But the only thing is, I really haven't done a lot of running. I haven't been very consistent since the Every Woman's Marathon that I did in November. So I've only been doing maybe 2 or 3 runs a week, and not very long. And I've certainly haven't been doing any long runs. And so I really didn't train for this half marathon like I would normally. I normally have a training plan and I kind of tick through it. And then I have my long runs, get up to the distance or my goal distance I'm going to be running. And so I usually have like a whole system leading up to a half marathon. And I just threw all of that out the window for this one and said, you know what, I want to go do it anyway. And what convinced me to do it was that the half marathon and the marathon start at the same time, and they're the same course. And so really, if you've never done a half marathon and you wanted an accessible course that has a really generous time cutoff, this is a really generous time cutoff for the half marathon. So I was like, well, oh my gosh, I could walk that half marathon and complete it. And so the half marathon has a 4-hour time limit. That equates to about an 18-20 minute per mile pace, which most people walk in pretty quick, or about 15 minutes per mile, maybe a little bit more, 16, but 18 minutes per mile. That's a pretty generous pace. And so this race does have a generous time cutoff. So if you're looking for a half marathon that really does have a generous time cutoff, the Louisiana Marathon, I think, is pretty generous in that aspect. However, that said, if you're looking for a full marathon, the time cutoff for that was a 6-hour time limit, and which is kind of standard in my experience for marathons, right? And so a 6-hour time limit is not as generous as the half marathon, because that puts it at like 13:45 per mile on the full marathon, which is a pretty good. Like I do a lot of walk running, so I have a little timer called a Gym Boss, and it's a whole thing, right? And for 26 miles, my last marathon was right at 6 hours, and I ran with a buddy of mine. It was her first marathon, and I think between the 5.5 and 6 hour mark is I don't want to say standard for first-time marathoners, but it's right around there, I think. So for this one, I don't know if the marathon would be considered really generous in terms of pace requirements. The half marathon, however, if you've never done a half marathon and you wanted one with a generous pace requirement, this would be one to look at. They do it every year. And so we went down this past weekend, like I said. We got down there on Friday. We, on Saturday, since we had kind of got in a little bit later, we got a little bit of a late start on Saturday morning, which ends up being why I didn't make the diaper dash, because we got up and we visited one of my favorite places in Baton Rouge. So if you know me, I love going to coffee shops in new cities. And so like whenever I go visit a new city, I'm always like, hey, what's your cool local coffee shop, right? Like that's kind of my jam. And my daughter had turned me on to 7 Brew a few weeks ago when I went down to visit her around New Year's. And here's a funny story. So when I went down for New Year's, I had gone with my daughter to work. So she works, she works second shift in a bar in downtown Louisiana, and she bartends, while her fiance is going to law school. And, so she was downtown bartending, and, I was hanging out with her there at the bar because, you just kind of have to be situationally aware and stuff like that. She was getting off late and going to be home. And so I was like, you know what? I'll just come down there and stay with you. And I did. And then I went to work with her, and I just hung out at the bar. I actually took my laptop and did some work. And I didn't, like I'm not a big drinker. So, I wasn't drinking or anything. But around 9:00, I started to get pretty tired, and it was kind of cold in there. And so I asked one of the other girls, I was like, hey, can we get some coffee? She's like, yeah. She's like, I can order 7 Brew. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. I just wanted something hot to drink and maybe, just a little bit of caffeine. And so, she got 7 Brew, and then I got like I should have known this is stupid when I did it, but I got this big old coffee. I started drinking it, and I finished the whole coffee. I finished the whole thing. You know what would have been a really smart question to ask when you drink something at like 9:00 at night? Like, hey, how much caffeine does this happen at? Because I usually don't drink caffeine at night, and maybe would it keep me up? But I didn't ask that question, and I just drank it instead because I was cold and it warmed me up, and it was great. Well, fast forward until 4:30 the next morning, I was like, bing, like my eyes were wide awake, like it was a movie Over the Hedge where the little squirrel, is it Sammy? I can't remember the squirrel's name, but the squirrel is like has the energy drink and is like time slows down for him because he's moving so fast. That's the way I felt at 4:30 a.m. the next morning after drinking one of those coffees. And so we actually slept pretty late the next morning because I had been up so late. And then my daughter and I, this is still New Year's, right? My daughter and I went to 7 Brew again. And I was like, oh my gosh, this coffee was awesome. However, I was like up forever. And the girl's like, what did you drink? And I said, well, I got like a large, like their big, I think it's called a blondie, right? And I said, but man, I was up really late. And she was like, yeah, so that has like 6 shots of espresso in it. It has the equivalent caffeine of 1.5 Monster drinks. And so like, it's just funny because in no realm, in no world would I just pound 1.5 Monster drinks at 9:00 at night. Like, I would not do that. But I didn't ask the question, and I did that equivalent, and therefore I had stayed up most of the night. So, that started my addiction to 7 Brew coffee down in Baton Rouge, which is, every time I go back now, I'm like, hey, can we go get 7 Brew? All right. Fast forward. Saturday, we've arrived in Baton Rouge. The day before the race, I'm like, hey, can we go get 7 Brew? And, of course, my husband's down there with me this time. He's like, yeah, so we go get 7 Brew and get a coffee. It's just as good as the first time. Ah, so good. And then, I guess it was probably around, it's like maybe around noon, and we still hadn't even had breakfast, right? And I'm drinking coffee, and I really need something in my stomach when I get coffee. And so I said, okay, instead of going straight to the expo, why don't we like find a local restaurant, and I can talk about it on the podcast and tell y'all about it. Like, hey, I found this cool place. Or, hey, don't go here, kind of thing. And we did. We found a really cool place. It was called Solou, Solou. And if I can figure out how to do like show notes and stuff like that, I'll link it down in the show notes. I guess it will be below. Since I've never done this before, I don't know exactly how it appears, but I'm assuming it's below wherever this is appearing. Okay. So that being said, we went to have lunch at Solou, and I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, and it was fabulous. Oh my God. So my husband got this wonderful, this burger that they make a truffle aioli and some other stuff. It was like a gourmet burger. It wasn't just like a normal, Five Guys, even though they make good burgers too. But I got, and I know it sounds so basic and so simple, I got a grilled cheese and tomato soup. But let me tell you, this grilled cheese and tomato soup will change your life. It was like a grilled brie, and the bread was the best. You know how you can get a grilled cheese and that bread has like the crunchy and then the butter and then the grilled cheese just kind of strings out, but it wasn't like normal cheese. It was brie cheese. And then they make their soup is like their own homemade tomato soup. And so you like break the bread apart and the cheese like stretches out, and then you dip that in that tomato soup. Oh my gosh, it was the best thing ever. I think it's probably, it might be one of my favorite grilled cheese and tomato soups ever, because that was fantastic. And here was the really cool part. So they come out, and when people have birthdays and stuff like that, they do that. But here they bring cotton candy. There's like a cotton candy machine down at the end of the bar. And I asked the bartender, I was like, what do I have to do to get some cotton candy? And she was like, nothing, I'll hook you up. And so they bring out like a little bowl, and they put like chocolate syrup in the bowl, and then they stick the cotton candy with the cotton candy side down to the bowl, so it like stands up, and then the cone is sticking up through the cotton candy, so that you can kind of pick the cotton candy off and around it. It was fabulous. I mean, what's better than a grilled cheese and tomato soup and cotton candy for lunch? It was the day before a race. It was so good. Okay, so we got great coffee at 7 Brew, had a great lunch at Solou, and then, oh, by the way, if you go during the pretty parts of the year, they had a fantastic patio out there, and they roll up these garage doors, and they had a big old patio and seating out on the patio with couches and chairs and everything. It was fantastic. It was a great place. I would go back. 10 out of 10. Recommend. Okay. So we went, got the coffee, went to Solou, and then we made our way over to the expo. And I will confess, like normally I'm studying the runner's guide. I'm like figuring out where to park and all that stuff. And I guess I just had a much more relaxed approach to this race, obviously, because I didn't even really train for it. I hate to say that, and I would not recommend people to do that because you can hurt yourself that way. But I know myself, and I know that I'm comfortable if I'm like running. I'm like, I'm going to tweak something. I'm comfortable saying I'm going to walk the rest of this thing, and I don't have an ego involved in that. I'll just walk the rest of it, and it'll be fine. So if you can't do that, I wouldn't recommend just going into a race untrained, especially not a half marathon or one of this distance. Okay, that said, we went to the expo, and I guess, I don't know, like with a race this big and their social media presence is like so good, it just pulled me in. I was like, yeah, it's going to be so exciting. And then I walked into the expo, and it was totally chill. And I don't know if it was me being chill walking in and like not having that pre-race excitement to kind of seeped into your bones and, get you excited for the next day. But it wasn't. It was totally chill. And you just walked in. It was in River Center, which is down on the river. And it's a great big place. And it was easy to find. You walk in and you had to go through a security check. So like you had to walk through what are those things? The metal detectors. That's the name of the thing. You walk through the metal detector and they do like a little bag check, and then you just walk in, and then they, right there to the left of the doors, you just walk in and you hand them your ID and they issue your bib there. And that's something that I've been seeing more and more races do. I've been used to races like issuing your bib and your bib number before you show up. Like they issue it whenever you sign up, right? But this expo didn't do that. And I noticed that the Every Woman's Marathon didn't do that either. So you just go in and you hand them your ID and they, like, yep, that's you. And then they use their app and then they issue your bib number right there. And so they hand you your bib and then you walk over to the next table and you show the guy your bib, and it shows, it must say on the back of it, what size t-shirt you got. And so they just, they just yell back there, large or medium. And then they had all of our stuff like already packed up in little, the little backpacks, that have the little laces, on them. So, that was really easy. And it was just like, okay, ID, bib, bag, and then, you walked around. And so maybe I was just expecting, I don't know, maybe I was expecting more. And maybe if I would have got there on Friday before all of this, maybe the excitement was there, right? But when I showed up on Saturday, maybe it had just died down by the time I got there. I don't know. They did have a cute little booth set up where you could grab some signs and take some pictures and things like that with the automated little thing where you put in your phone number and they send you the picture afterwards. So, that was cute. And then we walked around, but the expo was really, I got this sweatshirt at the Louisiana Half Marathon. I think this was one of, I don't know if I even saw another option that said half marathon on it. Like most of the swag said like Louisiana Marathon. And so, they just didn't, and maybe again, by the time I got there on Saturday, maybe a lot of it had sold out and I didn't see the full offering that they would have had if I would have showed up on Friday, but we were traveling all day on Friday and we didn't make it. So, if I had anything to recommend, it would be like, some runners can drop some dough on race merch. And, I just didn't have a lot of choices by the time I got there. So I got a sweatshirt and I got a beanie because it was, crazy cold down there. And I knew the runs this week back up in Huntsville were going to be even colder. So, all right. Okay, I'm going to check my little camera and make sure I'm still recording because I did this once before and I had talked for, 30 minutes and I wasn't recording the whole entire time. So that was super awesome. All right, so expo. We went to the expo and then it was fine. They had a couple of vendors set up. They didn't have like a DJ or anything in the building. They just had like music playing. And so it was just kind of super chill, super relaxed. And maybe that's the whole Louisiana Marathon vibe the whole time. I don't know. But most races that I've gone to before, like big races like this, they have like what's the word? They have just an excitement in the air, right? And that's one of the things I love about the races. It's just how exciting everything is from the expo to the start race, and all that kind of jazz. But it was super chill. So, we went to the expo and then, later that evening, we just went to dinner and, was getting ready for the race the next morning. And so this is funny. Every time I go to one of these races out of town, I take the time, or I try to take the time and say, have you got this? Have you got this? Have you got this? Have you got this? This week, or this year for Valentine's Day, I actually asked my husband, I said, can you make me like a dry erase, or just like a disposable checklist for not just my out-of-town races? Like, do you have your hydration pack, your bladder, your scratch, your fuel, your little timer doohickey? Do you have all that? That would be such a great gift. So I really want that. And then also one for my like weeknight runs, because my ADHD runs absolutely rampant sometimes. And I will forget everything from my Garmin to, I don't know, my shoes, to my lights, because we run at night a lot, and we're on the very eastern side of Central Time. And so we get dark at like 4:15. And so you have to have lights to run here in the wintertime and for a lot of the spring. So all of that said, I asked for these little checklists for Valentine's Day. And if I get them, you know what, I may actually share them with you as well, because if it helps me, it probably will help somebody else. So I will share that. Okay, so checklist, I get all of my stuff out on Saturday night, and I try to get in the bed early for Sunday morning. So here's the thing, it's an early start. Usually with marathons, I have a long cutoff time, like 6 hours. You have to start pretty early because the roads are going to be closed all day, if not. And this one was no different. The start time is 7 a.m. And maybe the whole vibe, the whole weekend threw me off, because I was totally chill on Sunday morning. Because usually I kind of have some pre-race jitters, and I'm doing all my things. I'm eating my breakfast and mixing my scratch up in my hydration pack and like all that stuff. I was fine. And I almost missed being really excited. And I'm like, ooh, I hope this isn't a normal thing, because I like that excitement. And that's one of the reasons why I actually want to come on here and talk to you about these races, because they're exciting, they're fun, and you feel the vibe of the crowd, and everybody's there for the same purpose and struggling together, and it's all great, right? So I get up on Sunday morning and I do all my things, and here's one thing about the race. We get over there, and the race it has the Louisiana Capitol building, the Baton Rouge Capitol building, right in the background. It's fabulous. It's a huge building, and apparently it's the largest in the United States, their Capitol building. And so it's a great backdrop. It's a really cool picture. And we get there, and some of the garages that were on the runners, like the runner's packet, where they had given us like local garages where to park, and some of the garages were actually closed and we couldn't park there. But we did notice that most people were parking on the city streets, where it was not paid parking. It was just, find a spot. And we found one fairly close, and we just walked to the start line. So at this time, it's probably 6:30 in the morning, and we make it down to the start line, and starts at 7 o'clock, right? So normally I would have been at the start line at least 20 to 30 minutes early, right? Because you want to go to the bathroom, porta pot lines take a while, and that's the thing. We get down there maybe 15 till start time, 7:45. And for some reason, this still doesn't register to me, like, hey, you probably should go to the bathroom before the race. 15 till, I'm like, hey, actually, it's probably 10 till. I was like, hey, I probably need to go to the bathroom before the race. And if you know me, I never do this. Absolutely never, ever, ever. My friends call me the camel. Just don't do it. This time I was like, hey, I'm going to go to the bathroom before the race. Maybe the second decision in a long series of bad decisions. But I went and I get in the porta pot line, and I was like, whoa, are these all the porta pots? Because there's not a lot. There's some races here in Huntsville, like the Liz Hurley 5K in the fall. It's always in October. It's a ribbon run for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And they have a ton of porta pots, right? And because there's I think that race cap is like 7,500 people. Well, this race, I think the cap was 7,500 for the full marathon, and the equivalent for the half. There's a bunch of people in these races. But the porta pots, they had like half as many as I've seen here at the Liz Hurley. And I thought, oh no, because the line was very long. And I thought, oh dang, this was a bad decision. So I'm hoping that the line goes really fast. It doesn't. And there was a really great, helpful person that was standing there on the corner, and she was like saying, motivational things. And if you ever listen to this, you were awesome. You were hilarious. Thank you so much. She was walking around with toilet paper, like giving people a few squares of toilet paper so that it would go by like quicker, because everybody was getting nervous because we knew that the race was fixing to start. Well, lo and behold, I think the second time in my whole racing career, I did not make the start of the Louisiana Marathon, half marathon. I was in the porta pot line. So then I do what I need to do. I get out and say bye to my husband, and then I run to the start line. And I look up at the start line clock, and I was like, oh my God, everybody's gone except for the people coming out of the porta pot line. And look up at the start line. I start the race 7 minutes, 7 whole minutes late, which is crazy for me. I also love it when races start on time, and I get nervous when I'm not going to make it. Anyway, it floored me. And again, it must have been this whole vibe of just super chill, not really, maybe I was too chill this whole time. Anyway, I start the race 7 minutes late. And usually about a mile or two in, I'm starting to settle in. I double check I've actually started my watch. And you start off this half marathon in downtown Baton Rouge, right in front of the Capitol building. And you make your way out of downtown, and you start to run around the LSU campus, which the run to the LSU campus was absolutely beautiful. Just imagine these city, like kind of small city streets with these live oaks coming up on each side, and like old live oaks. Right, where the limbs are so big that the part of the limbs are like scooping down and touching the ground, or some of them have support systems underneath them to hold the limbs up because they've gotten so heavy because they're so old. These city streets are lined with these live oaks like that, running by old churches that are just beautiful. The sun started coming up. There was a moment that was very, you always kind of have those moments of gratitude. At least I hope you do too. Where my dog is coming up here. Where, you've kind of gotten into your run, and you're just like, oh my God, I'm so lucky to be out here. I'm so thankful to be out here. I'm out here. I know it's cold. The wind, oh God, the wind was awful. But you know what? My body can do this. And I haven't lost that much fitness. And I'm so thankful for everybody in my life. And I'm so thankful to be out here on this beautiful Sunday morning. And the sun is coming through the trees. And I'm running by these old, beautiful architecture of these churches and buildings. And it was just lovely, right? I had a lovely experience. And then the wind starts to hit and you start to forget about some of that gratitude. But you run down around the LSU campus. You run right by the stadium. We came in at like gate 6 and we left at gate 20 something. And you keep running and you go through some of the neighborhoods that are over there by the LSU campus. And again, just the trees and the some of the parks that you run through, absolutely stunning. It's advertised as a flat course. When I hear flat course, I mean my expectations flat, right? Maybe 1, maybe 2 hills. There were more than 1 or 2 hills. Now, granted, Louisiana itself is pretty darn flat. The hills are usually a bridge where you have to go up and over, it's an overpass of some kind. There were several of those. There were also several hills that are within like some of the neighborhoods and stuff. So just be aware that it's not completely 100% flat, like some of the races that run along the beach that just run down a boardwalk and back. Those are pretty darn flat, no bridges. This had bridges. This had some hills. It wasn't rolling hills by far, but it definitely wasn't, the entire thing was not flat. Okay, so we run through the Louisiana campus. It was beautiful. We run through the LSU campus. It was beautiful. We went through some of the neighborhoods over there. I did notice there wasn't, and maybe I'm used to races that have more neighborhood support. And I don't want to say there wasn't any, because there was some neighborhood support, just not a lot, right? And I think if you were doing the marathon, that might be tough, because I remember in the Every Woman's, it was that neighborhood support that really got me through some of the long stretches. And I think that's very important to runners. So I didn't see as much of that in this course as I have in the past. Not saying that it wasn't there, just that there wasn't as much of it. I do remember there was a roller derby group that was great. They had great energy and giving people high fives and had the speakers out there and having a great time. There was also an area that we ran through. Maybe it was called District 504 or the 405. Anyway, I need to look them up because they were rad. They were totally awesome. They had great energy. And by the time, I'm coming through, I'm toward the back of the pack in the half marathon, right? And so we've thinned out quite a bit. And you'll often see people at that point, taking a break from their cheers, or, they've ran out of the pickles or whatever that they're giving out. But this group did not do that. And so I'm going to look them up afterwards and just say thank you to I think it was the 504 or maybe it's the 405. But y'all were awesome. And I still, I'm thinking about the people that were out there giving high fives and dancing, and it was just wonderful. And they had spray painted on the street, their run club. I think it was actually a run club that was out there. So that was great. And then as we were coming in, so you run around the LSU campus, you run through some of the neighborhoods over there. There's a hellacious hill, not right at the end, but, you're getting pretty darn close, maybe mile 12 or so, something like that, of the half marathon, which is, again, a bridge. And the winds, there were 20 to 30 mile per hour wind gusts during this race. And I thought, how on earth have I made a left turn, and the wind is straight into my face on every single turn? How is that possible? How does that work? Because that's exactly what it felt like the entire time. It was also 40 degrees, but I don't know. It definitely did not feel like 40, if it felt like 30, because I expected to warm up, and I wore my gloves almost the whole entire time. So it was very cold and very windy, especially for Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Okay, so we've gone around the campus. We've gone through the neighborhoods. You head back into the city. You go up over this big hill where the crosswinds were just awful on me. And then you start to come back into the city. The finish line is right where the start line is, which is wonderful because you know what to expect. And so we're coming into the city, and then I'm like, okay. I walk to a certain point. I'm like, I'm going to finish strong, and I start running. I try to finish strong, right, and do the things. And so I'm jamming out to my Eminem or whatever I've got going on in my headphones, or my Shocks is actually what I wear. And then I hear, Mom, and I thought for sure it wasn't like my kid because I didn't think she was going to be there. And then, oh my gosh, you guys, I was like, no, that was her voice. And it's amazing what you can recognize as a parent. You have throngs of people yelling and screaming as you're coming into the chute. And then I hear, Mom. And I turn to the side and I see my daughter, and my daughter's running toward me. And she ran with me, I don't know, maybe 10 yards or something like that, cheering me on and like videoing. And oh my gosh, almost cried. It was so wonderful. I didn't know she was going to be there. It was a total surprise. And so I came into the finish line, finished strong. I felt like, by far, it was not my best half marathon time. By far. Do I care? Absolutely not. Didn't care at all. Because I just went out there and I enjoyed myself during that race. I feel like a lot of times when I'm trying to like PR a race, and there were some people that were out there doing that on this course because of it is more flat than a lot of courses. There are some hills, but I've heard that a lot of people try to PR in the course or get their BQ because of how flat the marathon portion is. I did not PR by any means. Did not try to, and had a great time as a result. I took pictures. I stopped and walked when I wanted to. I walked through all the aid stations. Oh, that's the thing. With the aid stations, I did notice that by the time I came through, the water was still there, which is great. I didn't see a lot of like aid. Like I think they were doing goo gels, which I can't carry. Well, I can't tolerate goo anyway, and so I have to bring my own gels, which I love. I love the spring gels that I use. But I noticed the goo gels, they were out of all aid by the time I was coming through. So just a word to the wise, like if you're thinking about doing this marathon and just don't depend on them to have the aid by the time you come through the aid station. There were a few stations of Powerade I saw, but again, Powerade gives me like an upset stomach or something like that. That's why I do Scratch in my hydration pack. But the aid situation, I would recommend bringing your own aid if you can run with it. Especially if you're doing the marathon. I don't think you can count on the aid being provided for this. Okay, so my daughter comes out and surprises me, and it was so wonderful. And then I come into the finish line, and we finish. And one neat thing that they do is your bib, I guess, has your name attached to it, like electronically, because as you're coming over, they announce your name, which is really kind of wonderful. And I think they also announced what town you're from. So that was great. You run through, and the chute's pretty long, and then you get your medal, of course. And then I'll show you the medal because it's a pretty good medal. It's substantial, right? It's not a cheap one by any means, and it says finisher, which is awesome. So, like, it's a big, thick. I can't remember what the ribbon, the part that goes around your neck. It's pretty thick. And it says, finisher Louisiana half marathon on it. And then this is nice because on the back, if you selected to, and they had a station where you could do this, but you could get your time engraved. You could get your name engraved on it. I didn't select to do that. I selected to go have breakfast with my daughter and my soon-to-be son-in-law. So, let's see. Also here, the one thing, I like the card magnets because, but this, I think it's just a normal magnet. They didn't have like card magnets. So I'm hoping that, maybe the next race I can get a better magnet. So, that was one of the things I picked up from the expo as well. So race went well. Went to have breakfast afterwards at Hub and Spoke. Oh, I am looking forward to going back there if I do another race because, and recommendation, get the biscuits. So you can get a biscuit basket before your entree comes out. And best decision ever to get the biscuit basket because, and it was funny. I asked the girl, she was like, would y'all like a biscuit basket? And I looked at her, I said, are your biscuits good? Because I'm not going to waste that. And she just kind of gave me this look like, yeah. And so I was like, okay, we'll try the biscuit basket. So, she did not lie. The biscuits were actually fantastic. They were homemade. They weren't like out of a frozen bag or anything like that. So the biscuit baskets were great. Okay. So we had breakfast at, I think it's called Spoke and Hub. And I'll put that down in the show notes below because I would also recommend that. And so that's it. I'm going to make sure, I'm going to look at my notes and make sure that I told you everything that I wanted to tell you about the races. Let's see. Oh, one thing that I did not get to participate in at the finish line, I heard that they had either gumbo or etouffee or something like that. But I didn't my daughter surprised me and we just decided to go to breakfast instead. So I didn't partake in all of that. So there might have been pieces of the finish line, experience that I didn't get to participate in. So I can't really speak to that. And my bib, certainly, it has let me see, make sure that you can see this. So it had the drink ticket things down on the bottom. And, so they had drinks and food, or food and beverage tickets. So let me see. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Had 6 on my bib, and that's pretty good. So if you I don't know if you got a beer for each one of those, or if you got a cup of gumbo or something like that. I'll see if I can look that up and give you an idea of that in below in the show notes, or maybe on a post or something like that. But I didn't get to do that because we decided to go and get breakfast together. Okay, so we did do that. The breakfast was fantastic. Overall, the race was really great. I did. So here's the thing. In the very end, as I'm coming in, I think it's mile 12 or something like that. I had been the marathon finishers. The first finishers for the marathon are coming in, and which is pretty astounding. And they are just booking it, 4 or 5, 6 guys have come in. And then right as I was coming into, I think mile 12, maybe a little bit closer than that, the first female, finisher had just blazed right past me. I mean, it was just wonderful to see that. And I yelled out, "First female!" And everybody in front of me was cheering her on. It was fantastic. I loved seeing that. Okay. So, that's it. That's my first real episode. I know I did an introductory episode, which sounded a little ASMR-y now that I went back and listened to it. And I'm sorry if that put you to sleep. I hope that I don't do that with the rest of these because I'm definitely not that person. But if you've made it this far, thanks. And this is the first real race review in the Southeast that I have done. And I'm hoping to do lots of these, right? Because I do these races, and I think it would be helpful for people that are also going to look for races that are either accommodating on pace or, that have cool places to go visit. Like in terms of the city, absolutely. Super cool to go visit. Go to Seven Brew, get a coffee, go to Solu and have some lunch, get the grilled cheese and tomato soup. Spud and Hope for breakfast. Spoken Hub, that's the word, for breakfast after the race. Primo as well. Would highly recommend all of that. The race itself was great. Would I give it a bib endorsement? Yeah, I give it a bib endorsement. It wasn't awful. The race was fun. The course was beautiful. All of the trees. It was just, that part was spectacular. Running around the LSU campus was great. The expo was just, just not as exciting as I've seen other expos be. And also it probably would have really helped if I would have made it to the start line on time. That probably would have helped as well. So I can't knock them for that. That was my fault. Okie dokie. So, next up, here we go. Louisiana Marathon, great. I would give it, it's definitely worth you go doing if you're wanting to do a half marathon in Louisiana. If you want a generous pace requirement on a marathon, don't know if this is the one for you. On a half marathon, absolutely so. Okay. Now, this next episode, I hope it's the next episode. I hope to review the Every Woman's Marathon. We did this marathon back in November, and even though I haven't just done it, I still think that we need to do an episode on it because you need to know about this race. Registration, I heard, opens on International Women's Day. And so we're going to do an episode talking about the Every Woman's Marathon that we did in Savannah, Georgia this past, it was November, and tell you all about it because that set the bar really high for me. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get back up there. And maybe that's also what happened with the Louisiana Marathon. Like I had just come off the Every Woman's Marathon and just how fantastic they did everything that nothing else was just going to reach that. I don't know. But I hope that our next episode is going to be the review of the Every Woman's Marathon in Savannah, Georgia, even though it was last November. I think it's worth it. All right. With that, this is Behind the Bib. I am Lisa Watkins. I am the host of this, what I hope to be, wonderful podcast that will fill your ears during your long runs. I hope you have wonderful runs throughout the next few cold days, and let me know if there's a race out there that you think is wonderful, and I will try to look it up. All right. With that, y'all have a great day. I will see you or talk to you next time. Take care. Bye.